Ella Ella Miguel Serrano. Chapter 1. The Himalayas Master. I have remembered something from the future. I've seen myself wearing strange clothes and ornaments. I was preparing to fight in a war I knew nothing about. It was in a place which didn't belong to our time at all. What will come, the Master replied, and be no better than now. Master, this memory of the future has made me come to you here in the forest of Bundelkhand. I know you've lived here for a long time, and I therefore beg you to teach me the doctrine and practice of Tantric Kaula. You are the greatest master of all. You are Matsyendranatha. The Guru, completely naked, his body covered with blue ashes, closed his eyes and remained silent for a long time. His right arm rested on a short wooden brace. He sat in the lotus position, shaded by an old fig tree. At length he opened his eyes, as though returning from a journey underground. He gazed steadily at the young man, staring directly into his eyes. The youth felt as though he were being opened and examined in the most intimate way, nothing untouched, from childhood to the present day. At last the intensity became too much. He lowered his eyes in fear and in shyness. When you speak of a memory of the future, the Master said, you are probably thinking of transmigration or reincarnation. Perhaps you believe I can help fulfill your destiny. But reincarnation is not mentioned in the old texts. It emerged instead from the detritus of the flood, linked to the primeval serpent and to the dark peoples of prehistoric times. He looked directly at the young man. What else did you see while you were dreaming? I saw myself preparing to fight in a war, the youth replied. I was carrying a sword. The sword represents knowledge, said the Master. But before I accept you as a disciple, before I initiate you into the practice of Kaula, you must bring me a gift. I require the milk of a woman, mother's milk. We must begin again as if we were children. Where could he find such milk? He would have to go to the entrance of the temple, guarded by a statue of Ganesh, half elephant, half man, son of Shiva and Parvati. He would have to bow and ask the elephant god for help. As he wondered how to do this, he saw a priestess from the temple carrying flowers to place at the god's feet. She was beautiful. She smelled of sweet perfume. Her black hair was gathered beneath a garland of jasmine. Don't go away, he said. Her eyes were large and deep. I must have mother's milk. I am not a mother, she replied, and I am not permitted to become one. I am a virgin. Still, give me your bowl. The young man handed it to her, his eyes lowered. No, she said softly. You must help me. She made him stand, took one of his hands in her own. He noticed a small white spot between two of her fingers. Leprosy, he thought. She uncovered her breast. You must squeeze here, she said. His hand trembled. He did not know how. She guided him. The milk came forth. Ganesh is giving you this milk, she said. The young man tried to kneel before the priestess, but she stopped him. Then she joined her hands together and said, Om. The young man felt pleased, and yet also a little sad without knowing why. Crossing the wide terrace enclosed by a gallery, he heard the sounds of builders and sculptors cutting stone for the temple. Granite and marble trembled beneath their blows. The air was thick with dust. Alone beneath a marble gateway, a blind sculptor sat with a block of stone between his legs. He sensed the young man passing with the bowl in his hands, and, pretending to see, turned the empty sockets of his eyes to follow him as he walked toward the forest. The Master raised the bowl to his lips and drank, his eyes still closed in meditation. You must also drink, he said, turning to the young man. What remains is yours. The young man sipped the milk nervously. It tasted of jasmine. He could not help thinking of the priestess. Something of her had entered him, and the Master as well, forming a bond between the three of them. Surely now he was ready to be initiated. No, said the Master. You are not yet ready. I must first have your yantra. Master, who can draw my yantra? The Master told him to visit Sudhir Ranjau Baduri and ask him to perform the task, to reveal his inner nature. The young man went to see him, thinking he had heard the name before. Perhaps another memory from the future. He found Sudhir Ranjau Baduri seated in his hut with a young boy who handed him brushes, rinsing them first in a brass bowl. I should not do this, said the old man. I ought to make your horoscope instead. The yantra is a secret inner portrait upon which your outer appearance is based. To draw it, I must discover your inner vibrations and give them colour. Then I must determine where the centers are that produce these vibrations. Well, they represent your inner power and dictate the design of your yantra. They are like musical instruments, tambourines and zithers, which your master calls chakras or lotus wheels. Yet there is something absurd in this, for you are trying to change your yantra. I do not know whether what you attempt is natural, but if you succeed, you will be immortal. I will be your witness, if not now, then in the future, perhaps 300 years from now. The yantra was beautiful, painted in pale, indistinct colours, as though the old man knew its music would be soft yet irresistible. When the young man returned to the forest, the master seemed to hear this music too. A strange expression entered his eyes as he studied the yantra carefully, reading it with great precision. No one knows who created the world, not even Brahma. Something must have disturbed the balance of forces for the world to be born. Perhaps it was the feminine principle, the wife. Yet despite our ignorance of the origin, we know that in ancient times there were beings who sought to control fate itself. They were called the Siddhas. They developed their secret knowledge in 2 Himalayan cities, Agati and Champula. Those who approached these cities had to walk backward, signifying a return to the origin. Though not even God knows who created the world, the Siddhas may have discovered the secret hidden in the sexual power of the female. As I sit beneath this tree, the master continued, what I tell you comes from afar. It was transmitted by the serpent who survived the great flood, the flood that destroyed the race of god-men. For them, woman was not outside but within. Male and female were one, not alien to each other. Then she did something he did not understand, and the waters destroyed the land where the king was supreme priest. With horns upon his head, seated beneath a tree, surrounded by 4 emblematic animals, he meditated and guided the stars. You must follow his example. Unless you reincorporate woman within yourself, unless you sit by the roots of the tree surrounded by your animals, you will accomplish nothing. You will be only a leaf blown by the wind. After speaking, the master struggled to rise. He did so with great difficulty. Having sat so long beneath the fig tree, his legs and feet had grown entwined with its roots. Few understand the sacrifice a master makes when he accepts a disciple. At daybreak, the forest came alive, sending vibrations across the silent river toward the temple roofs. The master led his disciple to the royal stables of Khajuraho. When they arrived, the stable boys prostrated themselves, then fled. No one had ever before seen Matsyendranath in person. A black mare with a white star on her forehead stood in the stables. A powerful stallion entered, gently rubbing his nose against her feet and haunches. He withdrew and uttered a deep, resonant neigh as though master of the universe. The mare gazed at him. The air grew heavy, tense, like the sky before the monsoon. The drama continued until, like a crack of thunder, the stallion leapt. Then something extraordinary occurred. Like a prehistoric god, the stallion lay stretched along the mare's back. He seemed like a tattered doll, yellow teeth bared, while the mare stood strong and cunning, lowering her ears only slightly. "Do you understand what has happened?" asked the master. The disciple was too shaken to reply. Under the fig tree, the master explained, "All that must be changed. The stallion must be turned into a mate, the man into a woman. There is no other way. You remember how full of joy the mare was, anticipating her strength even before anything happened. And afterward, it was she who was triumphant. This is the story of the race. Woman came from man, but once the 2 sexes became independent, it was inevitable that one would devour the other. That is what the universe is. Someone gives, someone receives. There is always a sacrificial victim. Many believe the only escape from this cycle is asceticism and chastity, but this never works, for in one way or another the individual is always devoured. Always the man's role is secondary. The mare devours the stallion who has impregnated her. The bee kills the drones. The primeval mother carries around her neck the primordial lingam. Every mother, mare, goddess and woman is a devouress, and in one form or another every male is castrated and consumed. He paused. To change all this, we must redirect the tremendous energy you saw in the stallion. We must restore the original principle of male passivity and female activity. The world was created not by the masculine principle, but by the feminine. Love must learn to follow this course. Only those willing to learn how to love women in a different way, murdering them outwardly to permit an inner rebirth, will find the immortal city of Agati. The key moment is when the semen is ejaculated. When the stallion ejaculates, he becomes impoverished. The role of the male seems to end as the female's begins. But semen is also soma and must be conserved. It should not spur outward but inward. Outwardly it creates only children of the flesh. Inwardly it creates sons of the spirit. Outwardly it plays the mother's game. Inwardly the male is impregnated and engenders the Son of Man. No sons of the flesh are born of this loveless love. Only sons of the spirit, escaping cyclical life, created when the semen is driven inward, granting eternal life. In his doorway, the blind sculptor tapped the stone caressingly. After a while, he stopped, as if listening to an echo within himself. Just then, one of the priestesses placed flowers at the feet of Ganesh. Meanwhile, the master continued, "Semen is a visible aspect of the great power of which we are all a part. It is OM made into substance. It is the movement of the sun in your blood, the sea of life in your body. It is also the word by which you speak to the gods. You must preserve it if you wish to enter Agati." The disciple said he had seen statues of Siva and Parvati making love on the temple walls, but did not understand how the semen was to be withheld. You must discover this for yourself. You must transform a natural act into a ritual, make it supernatural. Ordinary sexual life creates neither magicians nor siddhas. It only perpetuates the human race. You must therefore follow a different road, and you must walk it with a woman, so that both of you may be saved. Without her, something remains unfulfilled. You attain nothing. Even at the end of their lives, saints and ascetics still yearn for women. This technique is not learned, it is grown into. At the moment of ecstasy, Siva remains motionless, he does not ejaculate. Parvati is the active one. When woman does not receive, she gives. From her skin, she transmits a substance that enters the man's blood and becomes part of him. Unity is created within him. The seed is planted and he enters the city of the siddhas. Pure sexuality is the nostalgia of the gods, a desire to return to the ancestral home. You are carried beyond ordinary existence. The life of a Kola magician moves against nature. It flows in the opposite direction. The master then spoke of the temple, though he did not rise from the shade of the fig tree. The temple is like the human body. Wherever you travel, from Mount Kailas to Cape Comorin, the sanctuaries are the same. The gods dwell in all of them. The sacred river flows through the human body. The true Kailas is within. Even the sky has the shape of a human form. The stars mirror the centers of light inside us. Those who journey outward to the heavens will find only empty planets. The true cosmos is interior. Each man must accept that he too is a temple. He must enter the labyrinth to find the central palace, the throne of Parvati. One must go underground to discover this hidden world and recover the keys to the lost continent. Only thus can the ancient energy of the god-men be revived. The submerged giants thirst for resurrection. They govern the stars and the impulses of the body, yet no one speaks with them. The bridge between past and present holds the secret of true understanding. The master then spoke of lotus flowers, of chakras. They exist, though they cannot be felt. Invisible flowers, symbols of the soul's potential. The soul has a body, the linga sarira, but it must be created. A person is a garden in darkness. Light is required to see the flowers. That light is Kundalini. It illuminates the narrow passages from one flower to the next. This may seem unreal. It is more real than what appears to exist. Immortality is a flower no one has ever seen. If it did not exist, it would have to be invented. Master then described the different chakras, the lotus flowers within the human body, calling them by their ancient names. He spoke of their colours and the number of petals each possessed, beginning with the flower of the genitals at the base of the spine, then moving upward through the stomach, the heart, the throat, and the space between the eyes until at last he reached the final one. This last lotus lies outside the head like a halo, marking the place where Siva met Parvati. It is beyond the human body and can be reached only by crossing a diamond-studded lake in a submarine vessel guided by a blind sailor. This voyage is necessary to discover the emptiness, whether it lies within or without. Between the eyebrows there is a flower with two petals, like the wings of a dove. When this flower blossoms, The third eye opens, and the gates of the city of Agati come into view. The master also spoke of other flowers, forbidden ones, located in other parts of the body, in the feet, at the knees. These rarely open. They are centers of consciousness belonging to the thoughts of the ancient godmen. A Kola magician may open them, but must not remain there long. Always speaking in symbols, drawing analogies between the inner and the outer, the master then described the channels linking the chakras. These channels are called nadis, filaments of the soul that carry the terrible energy of the ancient giants. He spoke of Kundalini. The fourth sleeps like a serpent at the base of the tree. Kundalini is potential power, capable of destroying the world of illusion to reach a higher reality. It must be awakened, created, invented. Together, male and female can rouse the sleeping Kundalini and allow it to express itself. Both powers are necessary, walking hand in hand to the summit. But the final leap must be made alone. Every stage of the journey may be repeated in another form, though only in appearance. The challenge of the leap creates profound doubt. This is not a linear journey. It curves and circles within each flower. The gardener stops, rests, sleeps at the root of the tree in a dark cavern. Refreshed, he resumes the ascent. Many times he falls back, only to rise again, learning his own being through this rhythm of advance and retreat. Thus he invents himself. He becomes his own father and son at once. A child is born. So frail, so delicate, that a breath of wind or a single evil thought could destroy him. Born of a man impregnated by woman, this child is the Linga Sarira, an astral body, an invisible product of the mind. He is transfigured when, through the alchemy of the Siddhas, a stream of semen penetrates inward and transforms the father. Some believe the woman is unnecessary. Others claim the process is purely symbolic. But the Kaula practitioners are physical. When the feminine soul of the man marries the masculine soul of the woman, the body becomes the instrument of their union, an instrument that must be tuned and played. This is especially true in the Iron Age, when the body seems to rule all decisions. The physical and the spiritual must move together. Each needs the other. For a long time, the disciple obeyed his master. He practiced the rituals, purified the passages through which the magic fluids would pass. He learned to swallow a long strip of linen and draw it out again. He learned to take water into his body to prepare for the inward return of semen. At last, he fixed his attention between the eyes and learned to stop thinking and breathing. One day he returned to the statue of Ganesh at the temple gate and bowed, touching his forehead to the stone. When he looked up, the priestess stood before him again, fragrant with flowers and perfume. "Why do you look so sad?" she asked. "What else can I be?" he replied, "when despite all effort I still feel." "Who is your guru?" she asked. "Matsyendranath." She wondered whether his lessons were given on some mystical plane, since no one had ever seen the master. The disciple said no, that Matsyendranath lived in the forests of Bundelkhand, beneath a fig tree. When she doubted, he offered to lead her there. They walked through the city and into the forest. Slowly, the disciple began to hesitate. The path grew uncertain. The fig tree was gone. There was no sign of the master. "You see," said the priestess, "I was right. Your Matsyendranath does not exist. Perhaps you have been deceived by your imagination." The disciple answered that the master might have hidden himself or become a tree. "It does not matter," she said. "I will show you the possibilities of your own body." He protested. His master would not approve. "Do not worry," she said. "Your body is a temple." She placed a jasmine wreath at Ganesh's feet and led him toward the cool darkness inside the temple. Before entering, she paused and showed him the outer walls. There, carved in stone, were the forms of Maya, illusion. On the lower levels, figures fought, wounded one another, took pleasure, and loved. Each of the 84 positions of lovemaking were reproduced, but the lovers carved on the walls were not men, they were gods. The distant look on the faces of the male figures was not human. Moreover, the positions of love were never spontaneous, never natural. Each belonged to a ritual. The women who assisted the central couple took no pleasure in the caresses they gave or received. They were like minor instruments in a piece of music, keeping rhythm, maintaining tempo, remaining in the background. It was a world of barren love which, in the harsh sunlight, echoed the stone wall of human existence. It was at once Maya and the sheer rock face of Mount Kailas, each configuration a god in the act of love, and it also reproduced the body of a man. The disciple recognized the temple from his master's earlier description. It was carved from a single block of rock like Siva's mountain. Before they entered, the priestess asked him to look carefully at the statues made by the Khajuraho sculptors. She wanted him to see how the sculptors had recorded the mystery of the gods. They represented a mingling of the divine and the demoniacal. The tension between them carried the message of this extraordinary art. It came from a mysterious and illicit zone, its effect etched into the faces of the lovers. Like stone leaves on a cosmic tree, their bodies were shaken by an alien wind. Ordinary people would never understand them. They would search for pious explanations to dispel the fear these statues awakened, but they would fail. This vision had its own vitality. It came from another universe. It was indestructible. Siva's face, at the moment of ecstatic union, expressed pleasure and sadness, piety and isolation, tenderness and withdrawal, all at once. With one hand, he delicately supported his lover, protecting her. With the other, he traced a ritual gesture, passing his message from one generation to the next. The interlaced stone bodies presented a vision that would perish only with the end of the human race. The spirit that built this temple belonged to a moment of divine decadence. Only gods, enamored of humanity, could have favored such art. The sculptors must have been mediums, blind vehicles of the message. Perhaps they were sleepwalkers, carving by night, absent from their cells. All the temples of Khajuraho run north to south, except the temple of Siva, the Chonsant Jogini, which runs east to west, marking it as singular. It is carved from a single block of dark granite, while the others are built from tan and red stone. The Chonsant Jogini forms a mandala difficult to penetrate. Its doorway is guarded by Ganesh. In most temples, the worshipper is enclosed, able to leave only by the main entrance. But here, the innermost chamber has 3 small passages leading outward. In the temple of Siva, these doors open to the west. She took his hand. "You are now walking inside your own body," she said. "You are searching for the entrances and exits of the mandala, the maze of all your flowers. This is the first room. Walk across it. With every step, say Om." They moved forward. The air was heavy with sandalwood smoke. On both sides were small cells with double doors. She pointed to one. "This is where I sleep," she said. "I prepare myself here. I make offerings." Then they entered the Sanctum Sanctorum, the Garbhagriha. It was like the crater of a volcano. The young man was overwhelmed. He threw himself to the floor, chanting mantras, one after another. From the center of the floor, the yoni of the primordial wife, rose the erect stone lingam, the phallus of Siva. United, they formed the androgynous Siva Ardhanarisvara. The granite column was polished smooth by priestesses, washed with sacred oils and animal blood, the menstrual flow of the wife. From time to time a brass horn sounded. The 3 doors at the rear wall remained closed. Then, from somewhere within the temple, a door opened. The blind sculptor emerged. He approached the lingam and sat beside it, legs crossed. The priestess stepped forward and began ritual movements, avoiding some positions, searching for others, with intense concentration. As though the air itself were a structure whose entrance she sought. She poured scented oil over the lingam, then turned to the disciple. "Do the same." He rose as if dreaming. She placed the oil in his hands. He poured it over the granite lingam and the yoni. The 3 lay down beside the dark column. Then the priestess rose again and handed a basin of water to the blind sculptor. "I am the river," she said. "You are the stone within it, and the man who carves the stone. You foretell the future." The sculptor rose and poured the consecrated water over the disciple's head. "You are a fish in the river," he said. "You must move to the west." The priestess spoke again. "Before the first stone was carved, the temple already existed. It has always been here. It only became visible. Within these walls, the demiurge gazes at herself, absorbed, admiring her vanishing beauty. You must learn all this, and more. Soon you will pass through those 3 doors towards something else." Once more the blind sculptor approached. Slowly, deliberately, he ran his fingers over the faces of the priestess and the disciple, engraving them into the memory of his hands. The disciple returned to the forest and sat down beneath the fig tree. No one was there, and he knew the master would never return. He remained there for many years. He subjected himself to the most difficult disciplines meant to purify the body and discovered many new ways to do so. At times, he believed the Siddhas were guiding him away from the city of Agati, and he felt caught in a battle between opposing forces. Then, for a while, the earth would seem to him feminine. In dreams, he saw twisted rocks trying to assume animal forms, struggling to cry out their desire for the warmth of animal life. He called to them in his dreams, urging them to hurry so that their animal brothers might in turn become men. Then a god appeared, with horns and crooked feet, playing a flute. He danced and sang, "The vineyard is blue, the wine is red, the blood of the dancers is hot. Come, join us in the forest of Vrindavan." The disciple closed his eyes and prayed to be relieved of this burning passion. Through the years, he encountered the entire pantheon of gods. He sang to them, he prayed to them, and almost without knowing it, he prepared himself for the ritual that was to come. Gradually, he became convinced that the priestess of the temple had died. By then, he had discovered the technique of looking and seeing, and the difference between them. He learned how to truly see a flower, a tree, an animal, even a thought. To do this, he had to block all ideas and all feelings, so that what remained could be revealed by an impersonal beam of light. His world was transformed. He began to hear the language of animals and rocks, to distinguish between colours of light. He understood that everything possesses its own soul and an independent exterior vitality. To reach this stage, he first had to know his own body, to become acquainted with the instrument that allowed him to see and hear. One morning, waking from a dream, he asked himself whether he would still see and hear without eyes or ears. To find out, he covered his body completely. He examined himself from within, his heart, his lungs, his veins. Gradually he climbed the tree of his spinal column until he reached his skull. Then he opened his eyes and saw the world for the first time. He used the same method to look inward, calming the body, observing himself as though a stranger. When he reached the top of the tree, he did not open his ordinary eyes, but the third eye between the eyebrows. It was an act of unfolding. The petals opened. The bird resting there spread its wings. He concentrated deeply on the point between his eyes. All thoughts stopped. All images were blocked. He sat in the lotus position and breathed rhythmically. At length he felt a slight movement at the base of his spine, as though a mouth had opened. The sensation rose upward. Coolness spread through his body. Rhythmic waves followed, expanding him while destroying him. When the waves of burning ice reached his throat and moved higher, he felt himself on the edge of a vacuum, ready to consume his ego, to erase his identity. Opposing forces tore at him. Terror overcame him. He stood on the threshold of death at the edge of the abyss. He resisted with all his strength. Something was pushing him, and then he crossed over in a fiery chariot. For a time there was nothing. Then he fell. Faster and faster, until he floated gently through dark clouds, turning slowly like a sacrificial victim roasted over flames. He rose again. He entered a region of thin, high air, light, free, in luminous blue heights. Suddenly he was once more a prisoner within four walls, already longing for the freedom he had tasted. He looked at his hands. Everything seemed to have occurred in a single second. And yet he had lived for centuries in remote epochs and submerged worlds. He now possessed the wisdom to open the secret chamber where the bird of paradise lives. But it was not easy. Each attempt was different. Each brought new difficulties. He could not make the leap again. Though he travelled with his alter ego, his astral body, visiting other regions, meeting beings from other worlds, something always intervened at the edge. His three-dimensional mind, his ego, retained its identity and fought back. Two universes clashed, one ancient and submerged, the other floating on the surface. Then one day powerful vibrations rose within him as from the base of a tree. The substance surged upward, through secret channels, turning wheels, making flowers bloom. But at the summit, it stopped. The ego asserted itself once more. The son of life opposed the son of death. The ego sought control. Once again, he was caught between forces, half-conscious, paralyzed. The blocked energy grew violent. He felt himself destroyed in a whirlwind. Blood spots appeared. At that moment, a basin of water appeared beside him. Obeying a hidden command, he plunged his invisible hands into it and splashed the water over himself. The vibrations diminished. He moved again. Had the water come from the river flowing from the head of Siva, from the summit of Mount Kailas? Exhausted by these experiences, the Kola disciple didn't even want to open his eyes again. He felt he was losing all his strength. It was as though he had climbed a mountain and was slipping down the rock face, covered with cold sweat. Then in the shadows, he saw a woman coming toward him. She leaned over him and wiped his face with the edge of her sari. He couldn't tell whether it was an illusion or not. The image was momentarily clear, but soon vanished. Then he heard a voice saying, "I've come to take you away." Together they lived in a jungle hut, and he acted as her servant. He did the chores, preparing the food and bringing water from a nearby fountain. Sometimes she would leave without telling him where she was going. He would wait for her patiently, and when eventually she came back, he would be happy. She told him about her perfumes and ornaments. In turn, he made her a tiara of flowers and a necklace of turquoises and sapphires. She taught him how to anoint her with perfumes and powders. She would then look at herself in the looking glass just as the carved goddesses did on the walls of the temple. When she came back from her mysterious trips, he would wash her feet in a basin of water he always had ready for her at the door of the hut. When night fell, the forest was alive with whispers. They could hear the howling of the hyenas and the wind beating against the trees. In a clear, sweet voice, she would sing songs describing divine love. Then they would lie down outside under a sky heavy with stars. She would sleep on one side, placing her head in the palm of her hand. He stretched himself out at her feet. During this period, it seemed as though each of them was living in a dream world or was acting out the events of some interior life. He felt the woman was becoming a goddess, like one of those carved on the stone walls of the temple. The moon would wax and wane, and still he slept at her feet. She would tell him about her childhood, about the games she had played with other children. She also asked him about his childhood, and so he told her about it. He spoke of two childhoods, one taking place just then, the other relating to a life in a future country in the southern part of the world. She was not surprised by this, but looked at a distant point in the treetops and spoke of a city known by the name of Ur. It was there, she said, that she had played with the other children. One night she asked him not to sleep at her feet any longer, but to lie down to her left in the bed. The disciple obeyed, crossed his hands on his chest and gazed up at the deep sky. She lay on her right side. The next day she went out at dawn and returned late at night. He was waiting for her, listening for her to come through the jungle. When she arrived, he rose and anointed her feet. That night she asked him to sleep on her right side, and he felt her perfumed breast next to his cheek. Nevertheless, he kept his gaze fixed upon the night sky. There he thought he made out the body of Krishna dancing in the sky-blue garden of Vrindavan, surrounded by all the milkmaids of the universe, but dancing with only one. Days and months went by. She kept taking her mysterious trips, but each time she came back. Once he asked her where she had been, and she told him she had been visiting her husband. More and more he realized that she was transforming herself into some kind of energy inside him. She gave life to memories he had long carried dormant within him. One night he dreamed about snow-covered mountains. They were not the Himalayas, but were in the southern part of the world. There was a woman there with blue eyes and blonde hair who looked through him as though he were transparent. He woke up with his face covered with tears and realized what he was dreaming about wouldn't happen for another 1,000 years. She wiped off his tears with her sari and anointed him with the same care with which she had bathed her feet earlier in the evening. "Why are you crying?" she asked. For the first time he looked at her as if she were a stranger. "Because I know my wheel is going to turn for another day," he answered. The wheel of Padmasambhava, who was married on top of the tree of life, also continued to turn, she replied. The secret marriage is a product of pure mental concentration. It comes from the light of a single star. You gaze at the star, and if it sends you words spoken by your love, you are married forever. "I'm afraid I have already been married in this way in the future," he answered. That evening she taught him how to kiss. Lying naked on the grass, she called him to her side. She embraced him with her long arms and brought her lips to his. Her kiss was so gentle it was almost unnoticeable in the heavy scent of jasmine. The following day she left, and he knew she would not return that night. He lay down under the tree and began to concentrate. Suddenly he had a doubt. Was he dreaming his own life? On the fine wood floor, a new yantra was drawn in gold and silver, with an outline of coloured chalk and powdered sandalwood. It had 9 entrances, for although it represented the universe, it also represented a man's body. It was a maze. Between the yantra and the entrance to the temple, a triangle was drawn, and then, one by one, a circle, a hexagon, and a square. Meanwhile, old women and wise men consulted the stars and the moon for a propitious day. Over the yantra stood a tripod on which a chalice was balanced. Several exquisite dishes and 2 carafes of wine and water were on the floor. When night came, the Kola disciple arrived wearing a white tunic. His hair fell over his shoulders and smelled of powders, ashes, and oil. He caught sight of the yantra and began a dance that was supposed to represent the flight of the bird of paradise. He danced around the yantra looking for the particular private entrance that related to himself, and when he found it, he stopped. The doors then opened and the witnesses came in accompanied by their women. They placed themselves around the circle with ritualistic flourishes, carefully avoiding the centre. There was a long wait before the woman appeared, but finally she came in, attended by her assistants and wearing a long cloak. Her eyes were closed, and she looked as though she were asleep, but she entered the yantra without hesitation or confusion. Her assistants did so as well. He and she then sat down together. After a moment, a voice was heard ordering that the feast should begin. The food was consecrated with mantrams sung by the servants and witnesses. The water and the wine were then consecrated with elaborate gestures, turning them into ambrosia, which is at once the blood of the sun and the moon, and the sperm which brings about the second creation of the twice-born. The wine was then poured into the chalice, and the mantram of the sun was recited, Kang, Bang Tapinyai, Nama Kang Bang Tapinyai Nama Gang Fang Ngang Nang Chang Dang Chang Yang Nang Thang Dang Dang Dang. After that, the glass was filled 3/4 full with wine, the rest with water. Then came the mantram of the moon, Soma, Mandalaya, Shodasha, Kalatmane, Nama. The wine was now turned into nectar, destroying the curse which had made it poisonous for centuries. It was now a magic potion which allowed those who drank it to cross the threshold. For this reason it was known as the blood of the sun and the moon. Flowers representing the man and the woman were then thrown into the liquid, and they began to drink from 2 glasses, passing them back and forth. Another mantram beginning with the letter G in honour of Ganesh was recited. With the first glass of wine, the couple ate cooked meat, with the second, fish, with the third, cereal. The ritual had transformed these forbidden foods into the flesh of a god. As they drank the 5th glass of wine, the witnesses sang and a brass horn was blown. After that, there was no more drinking. An invisible voice described the fragrant forests and flowery meadows of Mount Kailas, where Siva and Parvati danced during their magic wedding. The Kola disciple and the woman then rose, letting their clothes fall to the ground. A servant brought a basin of water. As they began to bathe each other, the chorus described the body of the woman. It was a pleasure garden, a temple of the sun and moon. Her stomach was a sacrificial altar. Her vulva held the fiery dreams of 2 worlds. Her hair was sacramental grain, while the soft fuzz on her arms and legs was like summer wheat. Her full breasts were volcanoes which strike fear among those who live in the fields below, and her long legs were roads along which the pilgrim passes. Her eyes were stars, her lips milk and honey. She then spoke, "I have fire within my lips. Come and drink it with yours. Be quick, my love. Do not hesitate." Then for a moment they seemed to fall into a trance because the water was pure ambrosia. After leaving the bath, they were crowned as king and queen, holding staffs or sceptres in their hands. The disciple then sat down with his legs crossed. The woman was lifted up by her assistants, who held her with her legs apart. They raised her to the level of the disciple's face, and then gradually lowered her along his body, touching all its different centres or flowers, until she finally slipped smoothly over his lingam. The man felt as though he had penetrated the woman to her deepest interior region. She then began a slow rhythmic movement, while her assistants, who were also naked, reproduced the gestures and actions that are carved on the temple walls of Khajuraho. They were an ensemble, moving together in a rising cadence, while someone sang, "Pure man, only woman remains when everything else is lost. All the others have died. Even the open eyes of the Great One have closed." The rhythm increased and grew more intense. The scourge of Smara plays with fire and dances on funeral pyres. She wears a crown of human skulls. Bless her, praise her. She gives control. She guides the vague. She delights the brothers of Kola. She leads them weeping with joy to a lake full of nectar and to the top of Mount Kailas. Bless her. Praise her! For a moment she seemed to be losing control and began to cry out, but then her lips found the heroes, and she played rapidly on him with her tongue. The chorus continued. Horror and beauty. Her body is Durga's forest, daughter of Matanga, wife of Brahmakumari, Lakshmi, pure, pure. Concentrating with all his force on the space between his eyebrows, he participated in every detail of the drama, feeling the woman entirely from within, his lips on hers, her legs embracing him, her arms around his neck. While embracing her, he also tried to protect her from herself by quietly making a sign with his free hand. But the maddening rhythm of the woman nearly undid him, taking him along with her in its frenzy. It was the moment of his greatest trial, and he knew he must discover a way out through some new inspiration. At that moment, he thought of the dead priestess, and as he did so, his semen penetrated himself, moving inward toward the base of the tree, where it wakened the fiery serpent. Like liquid flame, it moved up the trunk of the tree, opening the flowers of his garden along the way and releasing cosmic music. He then opened his eyes and with infinite tenderness held the woman and calmed her. But the feast was not yet over, since the witnesses had to dine, and their celebration. Chapter 2. The Pyrenees. It was festival time in the city. People were singing in the streets, and the balconies were covered with flowers. Through one of the narrow cobblestone alleys, a knight was pulling his horse along by the bridle. He kept running into people, rattling tambourines, blowing trumpets, playing flutes. They all wore bright costumes. In an arcade, he met a young girl and asked her what was happening. She told him it was a fiesta in honor of May, and then she added, "It may be the last one we'll have because Friar Domingo has banned the nightingale." She explained that the nightingale told her whether her lover would visit her when her husband was away. The flowers were supposed to keep evil away from Carcassonne. "Tell me," said the knight, "do you know where Archdeacon Sans-Morlaine lives? I want to see him." She told him that he was a Cathar in hiding from the Inquisition. She also said it would be particularly hard to find him since everyone was in disguise for May Day. Husbands were lovers, and lovers' husbands. Everything was topsy-turvy. "That's the way life really is," murmured the knight. Just then, an old man who had overheard the conversation came up to them. "This is the ancient feast of the Queen of the May," he announced. He then took off his mask, turned into a youth, and kissed the girl. It became evident that the youth was really a girl, and that the other young girl the knight had questioned was returning her kisses with passion. "I'll never know who you are," she said, "but I know I love you." It turned out she was a troubadour. In the evening, the knight finally succeeded in meeting Sans-Morlaine. He found him in the basilica near the left-hand door, wearing a blue cape and standing on a gravestone. The knight approached and told him he wanted to go to Montségur. "Are you a Cathar?" he asked. "Have you received the consolamentum?" "No," he replied, "but I've had a dream of love. I've seen her beckoning me on the other side of a drawbridge. She was trying to tell me a secret. I've got to cross that bridge so I can enter one of the 5 gates of the castle." "But Montségur has only 2 entrances," he answered, "one on the north and one on the south. In fact, there's really only one, since the northern entrance is reserved for those who are known as the perfect ones." "I kept hearing 2 names in my dream," the knight persisted, "Montabor and Montségur." "But are you a Cathar?" "Of course. How else could I know your name, know about your death, and see you standing here on your tombstone?" "You're right," he said. "Only someone who lives in the future can visit here without endangering us." "Very well. You should go to Fangeau, where the last Cathar lives. It will take you 700 years to find him. His name is Roquesmarceau. You should also try to see Esclarmonde de Foix. The knight then left the flowery city of Carcassonne and rode toward Fanjeaux, passing through patches of mist and hearing sounds of war preparations along the way. Finally, in an isolated place, he found the last Cathar, Roquemarceau. He looked into his eyes, and there was no need to say anything. The two men recognized each other. "We've met before," he said. "Haven't you already come to see me to have your horoscope read, or to have me sketch the colours of your soul?" "The boy who hands me my brushes isn't here just now." "No, I've only come to ask the way to Montségur." "Always asking about mountains. I told you once before that Montségur is not outside but inside. Why do you keep searching in the external world?" "I must. Besides, I also want to see Esclarmonde." "Didn't she build Montségur?" "Yes," he replied. "She did what her dreams told her to do." Roquemarceau then led the knight to a place in the Rue du Castello where 700 years earlier the castle of Fanjeaux had stood. "But there's nothing here but ruins," said the knight, "hardly one stone on another." "You've come back too late," he replied. "It's been centuries since the castle of Montségur was captured and destroyed." The knight paused for a while, looking at the ruins and wondering whether he was dreaming of the past or the future. His meditations were soon interrupted by the last Cathar. "Since you're here," he said, "I'll tell you a secret. It's really your own destiny. At the bottom of Montségur, a beautiful girl lies asleep. No one has ever wakened her. She is being kept asleep there by the perfect ones, who are waiting for a saviour to come from far away. When she wakes, Montségur will be destroyed, and the perfect ones will die in the flames. But I've come to save Montségur, not to destroy it. I certainly won't wake her up." The perfect ones know what they're doing. They don't make mistakes. They act according to their destiny and are guided by someone else who thinks and dreams their existence. Perhaps they are guided by this girl. For them, the destruction of Montségur would be a triumph. Therefore, you must go to this girl and make her your mistress. That is the only way to save Montségur now. Deeply troubled, the knight left the last Cathar. He was hungry and tired and went to an inn where he asked for wine and bread. A troubadour sat at a nearby table. "Long ago," he said, "we carved temples, but now we make them in our verses." "You believe in reincarnation? Don't you know it's forbidden?" "The perfect ones believe in it," he replied, "and that's enough for me. Just now we're not allowed to mention it in our songs, but if Montségur survives, you'll see the idea widely accepted, even though the perfect ones doubt whether it should be extended to everyone. Only those who have received the consolamentum really understand it." "Have you received it?" "I'm blind," said the troubadour. "Why don't you sing us a song, then?" And so the troubadour began. "I shall build a castle as carefully as I can, with trees and flowers and gardens full of birds. In the tall towers of the castle, up above, the knight will find his lady and symbols of his love. The first door is open, but the second's always closed. That's to let her test the devotion of the knight, to see if he is worthy to awaken her delight. The open doors and windows let the cool air in, for the walls are dark and heavy like love without an end. Even the open fire seems cold compared to the flame of love. Whoever gains this palace finds peace at the last. No foe will succeed in breaking down its walls. This is the sacred message I bring from far away." The troubadour stopped. Opposite him, the knight had fallen asleep, his head on his arms, hunched over the wooden table. He was dreaming of the drawbridge. A girl dressed in white appeared on the other side. She was calling to him. "Hurry, cross the bridge, you and I are one." Afterward, the knight wandered alone in the mountains, where he eventually came upon a cave. There he stayed for days and months. The troubadour would come and bring him food, and after a while he became a continual, though unobtrusive, companion. One day he told the knight he had done well to stay in a cave. He said the perfect ones carved signs on the walls of their caves centuries ago. They made pictures of human faces, fish and doves. Little by little, the knight began to perceive a face on the rock wall. It was a woman's, and strangely familiar. The man was alarmed, not knowing who had carved it or who it represented, but something made him adore it. In the distance, a stream ran by, and in the evening the knight would listen to it. He thought he heard voices coming from a faraway time and place. Meanwhile, in the dark air of his cave hung a message he could not understand. Once again, the troubadour began to sing. In the words of Percival when he was still alive, "Be strong and brave. Don't ask whom you serve, else you'll soon lose the lance and the grail. When I see you, lady, I forget all else. I only want to speak, to beg, but this I cannot do. I live all day in dreams." Encouraged by the thin air of the cave, the knight also began to live in dreams. Little by little he became obsessed by the face he saw on the cavern wall. He would repeatedly ask it questions. Then finally the shadowy face began to loosen itself from the wall. As this went on, the image of a woman's body began to take shape at the entrance of the cave. It didn't have a face, but approached him and went up to the stone face, which it lifted and placed on its own body. "Now I can finally speak," it said. "I will speak in the name of all the others, because I am the master of their masters. I control the perfect ones in all their being. I come from a great distance. With the help of the Cathars and the troubadours, I shall take possession of this whole region. I am the mother, and I alone know the secret." The knight believed he had heard these words in some other place, and grew anxious to meet the perfect ones and ask them directly. Then he remembered that the troubadour had told him to hurry, since what he was dealing with might easily disappear. Moreover, the Cathars were not likely to reveal their secrets to strangers. He went out to the edge of the cave and shouted for the troubadour, but all he heard was the echo of his own voice. Finally, he fell asleep on the grass. At dawn, the troubadour brought him goat's milk. The knight asked him where he'd been and told him how he'd called out for him. He then asked how much longer he would have to remain in the cave. He was anxious to go to Montségur. There was little time left, for the castle was under siege. He was desperate to be on his way. The troubadour replied that it took at least 20 years of training to be ready. "How long have you been here?" he asked. "A few centuries," answered the knight. "Let me see. We are now in the year 1244. And I came here from Asia in 900. Yet in a sense I feel I've been here only a few minutes." Spring and summer passed by with the help of the troubadour. The power of art over nature was enough to sing the time away and jumble the seasons. Here is one of his songs. "When the days grow long in May, I listen to the nightingale, and when I walk at dusk I consider my love so far away. I'm so sad and bent with desire that neither song nor flower cheers my wintry heart." Snow began to fall, and icicles formed at the entrance of the cave. Nevertheless, the knight did not feel cold. He wasn't really there anymore. His body felt like an icicle, but his mind travelled, moving with the swiftness of a living bird. His first flight took him to the foot of a mountain, where he began to climb a narrow path. Far above, he could see a stone house. After a while, he entered a small courtyard containing a pair of gates that guarded a tunnel leading into the mountain. He left his horse outside and opened the gates. Inside, the passageway was lit by a light that seemed to have no source. At the end of the tunnel there was a round room. A small door opened, and the knight entered. Inside, the room was brightly lit with mirrors that rose tier on tier to the top of the mountain. The knight realized he was no longer involved in personal or historical time. He was climbing a mountain of the mind on the other side of an event, passing through centuries in the light's shadow. He stared upward through the long passage that led to the summit, and there he saw someone looking at him from one of the windows of the stone house. This person said, "Traveller, go back, return to your own time." Below, at the foot of the mountain, stretched a lake of deep green water. Yet even if there were no clear relationship to the time or place of Montségur, the knight's adventures must have had something to do with it. Otherwise he could not have continued as he did. Once again he undertook his quest for Montségur, and he found it in a special sense, even though he made a mistake in time. What he saw at the top of the mountain were the ruins of the castle of Montségur. All that remained were a few stone walls. He climbed up from the foot of the mountain to look at them. It was a brilliant blue day, and the light made the snow luminous. After a while he passed by a stone inscribed with a date and a few words. He continued on, climbing the steep hillside. It became increasingly difficult as he pushed through snow and ice, and in the end he decided he had to go back down. He returned in a dismal mood. From time to time, he stopped to look back at the stone ruins at the top of the mountain. When he reached the place where he had first glimpsed them, he paused to look one last time. He realized he had not seen a single person or animal all day, only the old stone walls of Montsegur. Then he thought he saw something reaching out from the ruins toward the blue sky. It looked like a pair of arms raised in prayer, imploring help. As he watched, he felt he was receiving a message from another world, a region of extraordinarily pure light sending him a sign of love. The sight of those stone arms, whether they truly existed or not, silhouetted against the snowbound peaks, moved him deeply. He accepted the signal, not daring to interrupt the vision with any gesture. It was true. He had not reached the summit. He had come at the wrong time. But the experience made him understand that his effort had been recognized. They would not let him reach the top, but they expected him to try. With this understanding, the knight knew he was not yet prepared for the ultimate test. He would have to return to the cave and contemplate the mother's face. When he returned, he discovered that the face had disappeared. He looked everywhere for it, following the fissures, scraping aside snow and ice with his bare hands. Then doubt arose. Had a woman ever come into the cave at all? Had she ever placed the head upon her own body like a mask? And yet, in the midst of his uncertainty, a new figure appeared. She entered the cave barefoot, wearing a long white gown that nearly touched the ground. Without brushing the stalactites, she moved inward, walking directly to the place where the woman's face had once been. Her eyes were open. Her arms hung loosely at her sides. "I have come down from the mountain," she said, "even though I am asleep. I have slept for ages, waiting for you to wake me. Unless you do this here in your cave, Montsegur will never be destroyed." "But I came to defend Montsegur," the knight cried. "You will not be saved until it is destroyed," she replied. She extended her arms and moved toward him. As she approached, a perfume surrounded her, flowers from another world, a distillation drawn from ancient tombs. The knight trembled. Tears ran down his cheeks. In the half-light of the cave, he saw a small white spot between her fingers. Leprosy, he thought. I have seen this in another world. He knelt before her. "I will do what you ask," he said. "I will obey you and follow you wherever you go. One day I will awaken you, and Montsegur will be destroyed. I want no help from God unless it comes through you." She had slept for more than 3 centuries at the base of the mountain on which Montsegur was built. The perfect ones had found her there and left her undisturbed, knowing that once she was awakened, their castle would fall. They accepted this fate calmly. At times, they almost longed for it. Few knew the chamber where she lay or the hidden passage at the mountain's foot. It was a bare, dark room. She rested upon a stone platform covered by a transparent veil like a bride. Her arms were crossed upon her breast. Her hair fell evenly to either side. Her feet were bare. She looked alive enough to remind all who saw her that she was only sleeping. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, she opened her eyes. She unfolded her hands. She gathered her hair and moved through the chamber, even climbing the passage that led toward the summit. The perfect ones always knew when she rose from her stone bed. They did nothing. They watched in ecstasy and awe, overcome by the mystery of her being. More than one knight on watch sighed as he saw her walking along the battlements, pausing at a sentry fire as if to warm herself. With open, unseeing eyes, she gazed over the valley and river below, hoping to glimpse the knight who would one day come. After their first encounter, she vanished for a long time. Then the troubadour returned. He sat beside a tree outside the cave and spoke quietly. "You are now the suppliant. What you endure was revealed to me by the first troubadour. He received the message from a falcon perched on a golden branch of one of Eden's oldest trees. And he repeated the message, 'Only the prepared will reach Montsegur.' Then he left. At last, she returned. Standing asleep in the snow outside the cave, she spoke. 'Let us sit and talk. You may do what you wish with me. I will not defend myself.' The knight answered softly. 'It is I who kneel at your feet, hoping to be a mirror for your image. May my words reach your dreams. Your whiteness and purity justify my long pilgrimage. I see wounds upon your feet, stained with blood and desert sand. Your legs are temple columns, long paths I have walked. Your stomach is the moon's valley where ancient rites are held. Your breast is the mountain's summit where you sleep. Your forehead is the moon's crest seen from Montsegu's northern gate. Your eyes are a bridge I have not yet crossed, yet they sent me a message in the darkest night. Your hands bear the scratches of tombs you have tried to open for centuries. He fell silent. She shuddered and moved toward him. Her arms opened, her hands searched for his face. Her eyes were open, yet looked beyond him into the night. "Oh, my lover," she said, "if ever you become mine, if ever a night comes when I may lie beside you and hold you in my naked arms, I give you my love, my eyes, my life." Her hands found his face. She drew him toward her gently. Her lips touched his, light as a falling snowflake. Then she was gone, gliding across the ice like a ray of moonlight. The troubadour continued to bring food. He told the knight that the castle of love had 5 entrances and that 3 remained undiscovered. He sang no more. There was nothing left to add. The knight entered a new state of joy. Ecstasy filled him. Each day and night unfolded in delicate awareness. In the white forest, a snowflake brushing his skin or a bird lifting into flight reminded him of her kiss. He lived more and more within her. Her solitude became his own. He felt himself wrapped in her sleeping essence. One evening, the troubadour returned. "She will come tonight," he said. The knight waited at the cave's entrance. He imagined her rising from the stone bed, still asleep, hands leaving her breast, moving through the cold passages as fires dimmed in her wake. He felt her approach as a burning cold within his flesh. When she arrived, she looked into his eyes without seeing. Slowly she let her gown fall, first revealing her breasts, then the rest of her body. She stood naked before him, trembling, radiant, smiling in triumph. In her face he recognized the mother from the cave wall. Paralyzed by awe, he gazed upon her, repeating a single word again and again. From her body emanated an unseen substance that entered him. He understood then this was not love or desire, but a vision drawn from the depths of time. Her silent presence completed his understanding. When will this pale winter end? When will the snow melt and the ice? Will the nightingale ever sing again? Without hesitation, she had come back to the knight's bed, which was made of branches and skins. She was naked and leaned over him to undress him. Then she lay down by his side, crossed her arms over her breasts, and gazed at the ceiling of the cave without seeing him. Caught in her own dreams, staring at her private sky, she began to speak. "My knight," she said, "I've not come to you, but you have come to me at the foot of the mountain. You've entered the circular stone tomb where I lie dead or asleep. And now you must wake me up according to the directions I give you. Touch me with your lips and hands. I need your caresses. Start with my hair, then take hold of my breasts. Linger there for a while, letting your fingers encircle them. They are the fruit of a golden tree with 2 small suns that shine when touched by the tip of your fingers. Press your lips softly on them and then move down to my stomach, which is the deep night sky. Put your head there and listen to my shadowy heart. Then move your gentle hands down to my legs. I'll give you refuge in my knees." The girl trembled so much it seemed as though she might wake from her dream. Embracing the knight, she returned all the warmth she had taken from him before. Her hands caressed him, touching centers that were dormant within him. Whole worlds were aroused in his flesh. She had turned the key and was reviving the latent power of his flesh. The knight kept his mind as empty as possible. He knew he had to let her play the active role. One mistake or indiscretion would ruin everything. She would never again wake up. Montsegur would therefore be neither destroyed nor saved. He wondered how many knights must have failed this ultimate test called Ussag. "My love," he said with the greatest delicacy, "put your head here on my breast. You are ready to wake up from your long sleep. We must therefore both begin to live in this new dimension, in this new condition of waking sleep." Once again the mother's face appeared on the wall of the cave. Insinuatingly, it detached itself and approached the knight. "Come, take me," it said. "Take me like a warrior, a real knight. I'll give you my heart to devour, and afterward we can exchange blood." "It's too late now," he replied. "I'm attached to another. Love has only one purpose, and that is the fusion of hearts." The woman's face faded from the wall. Once again the girl returned and pressed herself upon him, kissing him with open lips. She sighed toward him and gave him her heart. "Now you have two hearts," she said. "You must now give me yours, so that I can live." The knight then kissed her in the same way she had kissed him. He sighed toward her interior and gave her his heart. Later, sitting at the entrance of the cave, the knight thought about what had happened. His heart was now in one piece with her, and his spirit had its own identity. The heart is a mirror where the lover sees his beloved. The knight now entered Montsegur. He went into her heart, although he did not stop living in the cave. He was in both places at the same time. He knew everything that happened to her and experienced her feelings. She also lived within him. Having made the heart the center of their being, they changed their mode of consciousness. The knight dreamed her dreams and shared her vision. He knew her sorrows and ecstasies, and she knew his. He now had a woman's heart, and she a man's. This fusion meant that each had a greater life, each had a heart with wings. They could move through space and visit the castle, the cave, the base of the mountain where the enemy was camped, and no one could stop them. A substance as delicate as a breath of air moved from her to him and acquired its tangible life within him, so that the two were always mingled together. Finally, the snows vanished. The knight came out of his cave and rode toward Montsegur. Since his heart was already there, he knew the way. After a while, the troubadour joined him, and the knight greeted him, saying, "Let's go to the battle and destroy everything that's perishable within us. You'd better sing us a song to help us get through the enemy lines. Your name and mine. It's a looking glass and also a sand clock that tells me how much time I still have." The knights seated around the table nodded their approval, and so he was allowed to enter the circle and sit with her beside him as a defender of Montsegur. Later, she showed him the rooms of the castle, how it was defended and where its secret passages went. She also led him to the hidden chamber at the base of the mountain where she had lain asleep for so long. High in the towers, the view extended over the Pyrenees. As they stood there in the late afternoon light, she began to speak. She told him that for centuries these mountains had been a refuge for holy men. When the great flood drowned the continent of the god men, and when the third moon fell on the earth, the keys of their knowledge were saved and kept in the mountains. They were all that survived from one world to another. The Grail was really a piece of Lucifer's stone crown that fell onto our planet. At his defeat, his crown was broken into 1,000 fragments and spread throughout the firmament. Only when they were all gathered together would Lucifer be vindicated and return to the throne. He is the morning star and the guardian of love. She explained that the stone that fell on earth was an essential part of the broken crown. It shone brighter than the sun and was like frozen fire with its green and white light. It was able to unite what is dispersed and to return everything to its source. Only those who walk backward can find it. It is a talisman that links the individual with the morning star. For centuries, this talisman has gone from hand to hand. Originally, it came from the Orient, but it was taken from there and has finally come to this place. When Montsegur falls, it will be sent to some distant land, perhaps to a place that is still unknown. In the meantime, she said, Montsegur will always be special, for its story will pass down through the ages, transforming the lives of all who know it. She raised her hand to protect herself from the evening sun, and once again he noticed the white mark between her fingers. Pointing toward the Pyrences, she told him about the fortified caves of Ornolac and of Black Mountain, where those in search was more or less a temple, and that the centre of the world was of the great secret were trained. She said that the whole valley, wherever the talisman was kept. We must move on, she concluded, and carry the treasure from one place to another until it reaches its last refuge, Venus or the morning star. There we shall reconstruct a crown as beautiful as it was before it was destroyed. He explored the castle so as to find out as much as he could about its subterranean passages. He felt at home there, but also somewhat constricted. He therefore asked her to lead him to the northern gate, so that he might visit the perfect ones who lived outside it and prepare for the great battle that was to come. She looked at him fixedly for a moment. Then she took him by the hand and led him into an empty corridor. He soon passed through the northern gate of Montsegur, leaving her behind. Outside there was complete silence, and the air was still and clear. An open terrace led to the edge of a cliff, while beyond stood the glistening white mountains. Near the edge was a small group of cabins surrounded by bushes and low trees. Everything was imbued with a faint lavender light. He walked toward one of the cabins on the precipice. It had no windows, but the door was open, and he entered. In the middle of the room, sitting cross-legged, was the perfect one. His eyes were fixed and open, and he had a vague smile on his face. He seemed to be in a trance, for when he spoke his lips did not move, and the sound came from the roof of the room. "Diaus vos benissige. Come in." For a long time nothing was said. Then, whether he spoke the words or not, the man asked where he was. "Don't you realize," came the reply, "that you're visiting the ruins of a castle destroyed 700 years ago? All you're seeing is the ghostly shadow of something that hasn't existed on Earth for centuries. It exists only in the light of a distant star. You are coming here from the future. You've been able to cross intersecting planes of light. Perhaps you're in a parallel time in which Montsegur both exists and is destroyed. But the fall of Montsegur is always taking place, each time with a different luminosity. Even though these parallel times and planes cross one another, they do not touch. They are like bells sounding in closed universes. What happens here on Earth has already had a prior existence somewhere else through some other concentration of light and continuum of time. You and I are taking part in the distant drama of Montsegur, and at the same time are engaged in a personal drama within ourselves." The perfect one sat motionless, and a faint light played on his face. It seemed as though he then spoke again. "We were opposed to marriage and to physical copulation because they gave birth to new bodies that could only be corrupted by nothingness and death. Instead, we wanted a copulation of the mind, a mental wedding of the sort performed in the secret ceremony inside the castle. That was the real initiation, the true secret and treasure of Montsegur. They say that just before the castle fell, 4 knights succeeded in escaping by means of a silver rope. They took the treasure of Montsegur with them. 3 of their names are known, but the 4th is not." Chapter 3: The Andes. The May-Day sun filtered through the thick green. Red copihue flowers were scattered among the pine trees, and the atmosphere was suffused by the penetrating odour of the dark forest. The man rode along on a horse with a white star on its forehead. As he passed under the great trees, he thought how open and benign the woods were, and how pleasant the murmur of waterfalls and streams. The only danger came from the light. It created a sense of longing, a dream of invisible beings who had once inhabited the place and who might still be found there. From time to time the horse stopped, widened its nostrils, and neighed as though it sensed their presence. They continued on until they emerged from the forest into an open valley. Ahead of them rose the massive snow-covered range of the Andes. At the end of a long day, the man dismounted and tied his horse to a tree. He then walked toward an opening that looked like a cave. A figure came out of it and walked toward him with arms extended. He had a long beard and was dressed in a poncho that flapped in the breeze. He stared straight ahead, but when he came near the man, he stretched out his arms and placed them on his shoulders. Then he ran his fingers over his face, and the man felt he had experienced this once before, as though the fingers had modelled his face in another age. Later, they sat down by the fire. He saw that the old man was blind, but that his dead eyes were blue. "I'm not surprised that you're blind," he said, "but I didn't expect you to have blue eyes and white skin. I thought you'd be a wild man with dark hair and Mongol features." "We'll talk of that later," replied the old man, "but first you must tell me why you came here." "I was told that a wise man lived in these parts who knew all about herbs. I'm looking for an herb that will cure a friend. There's some sort of medicinal root in this part of the world, some kind of moss or resin that's strong enough to save her." "There's no herb that can cure her. Her illness is in her blood." The old man then spoke of the way in which vegetables and minerals imitate the organs of the body. The lungwort, for example, is fibrous and very much like the lung itself. The copihue is a bellflower full of blood, while the rose is coagulated blood. "There's a dead man," he said, "hidden in these mountains with a rose in his breast." But I've come for medicine. The hermit was not to be silenced. The loika bird also has a red breast, he continued, and she helps me find the cure. But don't worry, you don't have to take the medicine directly to her. All you have to do is touch it with your hand and then touch her breast. This illness concerns her invisible body, not her visible one. Illness is a disequilibrium between these two bodies and the breath or current that unites them. The stars are also important, for they have an influence on human bodies. What's your friend's birthstone? Topaz. The hermit went on as though he had heard nothing. The South Pole sends out an orange-coloured emanation, he said, and represents the Earth's sexual organs. The left side of the body also emits an orange light. I still don't understand why you are white. I thought you'd be an Indian. Quetzalcoatl was also white. Don't you know that America was once called Albania? It was a white continent for white gods. They preserved an immaterial substance here, a kind of gold that you can drink. Perhaps that's what you want for your friend. It will be easier for you to give it to her when she's dead. He then explained that there were two roads that could be followed. The first was dry and relatively short. The second, and longer, was known for being wet or moist. It was that way because it was a road of tears. The old hermit fell silent, and the man with him remembered that somewhere he had eaten gold and silver leaves. But he couldn't recall where. The road I've been speaking about has been abandoned for a long time, he said. There are only a few traces left of it in the highest mountains. The flickering of the fire cast shadows on the old man's face. At last he spoke. Take her this dried flower which has been created by the fire. The man walked slowly through the city. By the time he reached her house, the evening light was falling over the nearby hills. She opened the door and led him by the hand into the dark corridor. They had become friends because they were both interested in finding the myth of their lives. They both belonged to an order, but he didn't know whether hers resembled his own. It was nevertheless clear they had some common point of origin and that their destinies were linked. You must rest, he said. It's getting late, and you shouldn't tire yourself. She bowed her head, and he took her into the bedroom where he laid her on the bed. He covered her with a shawl and placed cushions under her head. She had taken off her red robe and wore only a white gown. Her blonde hair was held in place by a silver headband. She raised her hands to straighten her hair, and the sleeves of her gown slipped down, leaving her arms uncovered. They were thin, with delicate blue veins. Her long, nervous fingers disappeared for a moment into her golden hair. She paused, as though meditating, and then smiled. He recognized this special look which sometimes moved over her face. "Where have you been?" she asked. "I found a hermit in the south," he answered. "Who gave me this dried flower for you?" He said it was made of fire and doesn't lose its petals. What else did he say? He said that America was once called Albania, the land of the white gods of Quetzalcoatl, Kontiki, and Viracocha. Do you know anything about that? Yes, she answered. He sat down on the edge of the bed and she began to speak, holding one of his hands in her own. She told him that the Book of Enoch, a work that was written before the flood, speaks of a race of beings whose hair was like wool and who had transparent skin. This race apparently came from some other world and did not originate here. In the book, the prophet Enoch is taken away from this world in a chariot of fire. Other ancient writings also mention giants who are supposed to have built the great stone monuments at Tiahuanaco, Easter Island, Brittany, Stonehenge, and many other places. They made Cape Horn and Nanmatal in the Pacific near the Caroline Islands, where there are nearly 50 artificial islands. These giants were hermaphroditic and had the essence of woman within their hearts. Their right sides emitted a blue light, their left an orange. Then something happened. No one knows whether a moon fell onto the earth or what other disaster took place, but the giants were forced to disappear or hide in the mountains. To this day, they wait there for the return of the old sun that warmed the world they knew. Another explanation for this catastrophe is that the giants fell in love with the daughters of men and ceased being hermaphroditic. According to this theory, the expulsion of their female powers created dual beings who were partly physical, partly spiritual. There were now two races on Earth, one half human, half divine. descended from the giants who consorted with the daughters of men, the other the children only of human beings. The first race was still linked to extraterrestrial powers by a power called Vril. They had originally developed their civilization in the north on a great polar island whose capital was Thule. It was surrounded by snow-capped mountains, but the centre was a warm green oasis. The men had white skin and their hair was like wool. The women had long golden hair that floated in the wind. These Arctic creatures were clairvoyant. They wore moonstones as a sign of their power and emeralds in honor of Venus. They also introduced the practice of magic love, whose purpose was to reunite opposites and join extremes together. Their work symbolized a return to the world of giants. It was the pilgrimage of the prodigal son to his lost home, a movement to a point of origin beyond time. But this high civilization came to an end. Thule vanished, and the poles became uninhabitable. The green oasis of the Hyperboreans disappeared. Was that where the mythical garden of golden apples was, the one inhabited by smiling animals? He asked. Animals also had their places in the heart of man, she answered, while man was still complete. But not all of the Hyperboreans died when Thule disappeared. Some went to the mountains and established a civilization that flourished until it was destroyed by another catastrophe. Finding that disasters came in cyclical fashion, they built 2 underground cities in the interior of the Himalayas. These were called Agati and Champula. There, the survivors retained their link with extraterrestrial forces through Vril and continued to teach the ritual of magic love. They also kept an emerald on whose surface was inscribed the unearthly wisdom of the Hyperboreans. Only a few of the masters understood these characters. In Champula, they taught the magic that had made possible the construction of Cape Horn and the Pacific Islands and other rocky promontories over the face of the earth. They tried to recreate the energies that had brought these things into being and hoped to produce a mutation of the species that would enable the giants to return to their original forms before they were corrupted by the children of men. These events are of course symbolic and represent an internal development. The transparent white skins, the woolen hair of the men and golden tresses of the priestesses do not belong to this world. They are not physical characteristics, they refer to invisible bodies. If this myth is treated in a literal way as a return to a lost home, it will become diminished and lose its force. She was tired and her breathing became more difficult. Nevertheless, her presence dominated the room. Here in the southern part of the world, this magic city of the giants has different names. It has been called the City of the Caesars, Trapalanda, Paitete, Elilin and Gran Quivira. Some Spanish conquistadors knew of its existence and came in search of it rather than to discover material gold. She then fell silent. He smoothed her hair and she looked up to smile at him once more. You must promise me you'll look for that city and take me there. Only if you ever enter. It's always like that. When someone falls or loses his way, another takes his place and continues on surreptitiously, taking on the mantle of the elect. Even though it was late, the man decided to call on his master. Somehow he believed that the master knew of his conversations with the hermit and the woman, and so was expecting him to call. Nevertheless, when he arrived, he hesitated at the threshold. Then the door opened and the master stood before him. He stepped aside to let him enter. Once inside the master's study, he saw the book of the order. Inside were inscribed all the names of the members of the Andean branch. His was there, written in the master's hand. Because of the master's intensity, it was hard to look at him. His eyes were very bright and his features mobile and expressive. He was of ordinary height and weight, but seemed exceptionally virile and sensitive. Master, he began, I want to consult you about my experiences. It's been a long time since I've been here, and I'm anxious to talk to you about them. The master assented, and so the man began by telling him about the hermit. He also spoke of what his friend had told him about the Hyperboreans. He described her illness and asked the master how he could help. For a long time the master remained silent. He was beyond the state of pity for the human condition. Woman diminishes the sacred purpose of our order. By now you should have overcome these human affections. Man is dual, he carries a woman inside him. Man's soul is feminine and woman's is masculine. An initiate of either sex should not need the other. Each should be capable of fulfilling himself. Perhaps you've forgotten what the magic wedding means. The only wedding that counts is with oneself. All the warriors of our order function on an exalted level. We are not concerned with doctrines or legends. Our warfare is on a plane beyond human feeling. It is a struggle with oneself in order to attain the totality of being a man-magician, which is quite different from being a saint. We are not mystics, but warriors, and I've already given you the sign and the sword. They help bring about change and are universal, functioning on both visible and invisible planes. You must therefore go into battle. That is all. The sign links the universes, joining parallel times. Your personal vibration makes a pact between them. If you'll trace on your body the last sign I gave you and concentrate on the space between your eyebrows, stopping all thought so as to open the third eye, you'll leave your physical body and be projected into an outer plane. You'll be taken to the Siddhas of Agati and to the city of the Caesars. You must take your sword with you, however, so as to fight enemy forces that come across your path. You must go into battle so as to put off the approaching catastrophe. The right number of the elect must pass through the 3 open doors that face the west. He was unable to sleep. He rolled back and forth in his bed until the light of dawn began to filter through the window. Then, for a while, he fell into a light sleep. A young man carrying a flower appeared before him. He was handsome and had a wide forehead. Approaching the edge of the bed, the young man placed the flower on the man's breast and leaned over to kiss him on the cheek. The room was suffused with childhood smells, and the man said, "Who are you? I can't remember your name." The youth smiled and said, "I was your childhood friend. I have grown physically, but I am still a child in spirit." Then he disappeared. After a while, he began to dream of his childhood. He was climbing over some rocks with a young girl of his own age when suddenly she slipped and began to fall. He grabbed her hand and held on to her as long as he could. But gradually her hand slipped out of his own. As she began to go, she gazed fixedly at him. Just before their hands parted, he saw the intensity of her terror, which seemed to encompass the whole world. Her scream hung in the air. He woke up, holding on to the pillow as though it were a rock. After that, he fell into a deep, dreamless sleep and woke up late in the afternoon. He dressed swiftly and went out into the street. There he began to think about his dreams of childhood. Far away in the country, he had once kissed a playmate on the cheek with the same kiss that had just been returned to him. By now, the boy was probably dead, but he had never forgotten that kiss. As to the girl who fell, he often dreamed of her, even though nothing of the kind had ever happened. He wondered whether he was experiencing an event from some simultaneous or parallel existence. He had the feeling that his life on Earth was less real than something taking place somewhere else, even though it had a certain relationship to his daily existence. He felt that someone else was directing these events. Still, he thought he recognized the girl in the dream. She was a childhood friend with whom he had run races and climbed over the hills near the city. She was an alter ego, always with him, protecting him and trying to win his admiration. Her pale face was framed by thick black hair, and her eyes were like water at night. When she let go of the rock, her hair floated for a long while over the abyss. As he walked along, he realized how his ideas of love and death were always mixed together. He'd never been able to forget that girl and wondered what had become of her. Was she really at the bottom of the chasm? He often thought of her as his first love, but wondered whether she had really died before he was born. He often thought that he was under the influence of some pre-existent love, which made him feel isolated from his master. The dream of love passed on to him by his ancestors came from somewhere he could neither identify nor renounce, yet it oppressed him all his life. It was like an idea struggling to be expressed or an order that had to be obeyed, like a religion. He wanted to discover the phantoms that controlled his being, since they alone could help him. Once again, he was in front of his friend's house. The door was half open, and he had a premonition. He went in quickly and found her lying on her bed with her nightgown soaked in blood. She said nothing, and all he could think of was the girl who had fallen over the cliff. He was still trapped in his dream. He leaned over her, touching her hair softly as if to dispel what was happening. He kissed her blood-stained lips and swallowed some of her blood, tasting its bitter sweetness. Then he fetched a towel and a bowl of water and washed her face and arms. Afterward, he changed her gown. At last she spoke. "I'm afraid last night exhausted me. But I'm not sorry, because what is happening would have to come about anyhow. We are now brother and sister. Our agreement has been fulfilled, and you have drunk my blood. Now you must give me some of yours. Long before men loved women, they loved one another and became blood brothers. Feelings can't last without that exchange." After a pause, she resumed, "It's strange how we seem to be like two sleepwalkers going down a road." She then told him that she felt her chest was full of blood again and asked him to give her a bath, since she couldn't do it herself. He picked her up in his arms. She rested her head on his shoulder and her hair fell over his chest. He stood her in front of a looking-glass and took off her gown. She looked at herself naked and said, "I can't love with this body any more, but from now on I'll need it less and less. Our love will be fulfilled through other bodies." She stood erect with her shoulders squared. Her neck was long and her arms hung by her sides. She had long, thin legs, and the only signs of blood left in her were blotches on her hands and feet, as though she had been crucified. He picked her up again in his arms and placed her in the bathtub. He began to wash her, and when he came to her feet, he knelt down. She looked down at him with her faraway eyes and pointed to her side, just below her breast. A white spot appeared, like a lance wound. She touched his head with her hand and said, "Take off your clothes and get into the bath with me." He did so and lay down beside her, holding her hand. "When I die, you will carry me within you. I will be one with you and live there. A part of you will also die with me and rot with me in the tomb. Your soul will become me and will have no face or body except what I give it. In this way, it will become a person. It will have identity because I'll give you my eternity. This will be our wedding." They lay together as though sealed into oblivion. "Tonight, as our destiny is being fulfilled, you must speak to me of love," she said. "The flower of love seems to be disappearing. Young people don't seem to care about it, which means that love as a spiritual experience will vanish. But we have exchanged blood and become brother and sister. My essence is already moving through your blood, and I'll love you even more when I'm dead. On earth, this happens once and never again." "I think I loved in this way once before," he replied. "There was a priestess in a temple, or perhaps a woman in a mountain cave. I wonder if that was you. Did I dream it, or is this reincarnation? I wonder if we'll ever meet again outside of time and memory." "I've never existed before," she answered, "and will never exist again. It's a matter of once only. We're now at the definitive center of things. When I'm gone, someone who exists in your blood, some ancestor, will teach you about reincarnation and what you can obtain from it. What holds the stories together is the narrator. All that matters is the angel of love. We live and die for him. We help him understand designs which he can perceive only as we reveal them to him." Dawn was approaching, the morning star just appearing. "We should pray," she said. "Till tell you what to say so that you can always repeat it when I'm no longer here. When you say it devotedly, I'll appear like the light of this star." Later on he received a letter. "It's very late, but I can't sleep. I'm sliding away, falling into space. Don't let go of me. Don't let me fall. I put all my faith in you, knowing you'll help me and not allow me to die completely. You must save me and let me fall into you instead of the void. You can't change our destiny. I must die so that you can live." What would happen if I lived? I'd be simply one more love destroyed as the days go by, transformed into indifference. But with me, it will be different. I'll never turn into the devouring mother. The lover's highest destiny is to renounce eternity and give it to the person he loves. I, therefore, give you my eternity. I shall fall into your soul and give it identity. I shall remain eternally young. And when you die, you'll fall into me, join me within. If you fail, everything will have been in vain, and the angel of love will turn his back on you. But now I'm so tired. Come again tomorrow. We have one more ritual to fulfill. Wearing a long white nightgown, barefoot, and with a silver band in her hair, she stood in the centre of the room. Beside her was a carved wooden figure of a man with wings folded at his sides. On the couch lay a carved heart, also with wings, made from the same red wood. "Lie down on my bed," she said, "and let my vibrations penetrate you. This winged heart is ours. It represents man and woman together. It knows how to fly to the heavens and how to return. We shall go with it and become united in it." Lying down with his eyes closed, he felt her hand on his forehead. Gradually he became drowsy but could still hear what she was saying. Love does not relate to two but to four. 1, 2, 3. First you love with your physical body, the man you are loving, the woman I am. Then the woman inside you, your soul, loves my soul, the man within me. This love may be externally sterile, but it gives birth to an eternal son, a being with wings, and so we have 4 within, and the 5th is our son, the winged man who is also the son of death. As she counted, each time more elaborately, she seemed to grow in size and become translucent. Her light filled the room, and then he saw that she was leaning over the bed with a dagger in her hand. She plunged it into his heart and put the winged one in its place. More and more her eyes reflected the light of another universe. One night she called out, "Do you know," she whispered, "that when a metal is put into the fire, it loses an essential part of its power? That's why the fire has to be cold, as frozen as death." Later on, he heard a noise in the room, as though someone were opening a door and walking barefoot. She was sitting up in bed with her arms stretched out, her eyes open unnaturally wide and staring at a corner of the room. She had fallen from the rocks. They lowered the corpse into the grave, and he then walked down the road. Suddenly, he thought he heard a voice saying, "Don't go away! Don't leave me alone!" He went back and stood by the edge of the grave under the midday sun. He felt a current rising from the ground and slowly entering his body. It was like a vibration coming upward in waves. For a long time he stood there without moving or thinking, allowing himself to be taken by that force until it gradually diminished. Perhaps she was giving him the spirit of her blood, her last energy. Then he understood that this was the secret wedding ceremony. The man spent many years exploring the south, searching for the enchanted city. Inexorably, he was carried farther and farther south by a current that led to the pole. He was looking for the white island in the sky, which the John people speak of and which is also mentioned by the Selknam magicians of Tierra del Fuego. These strange people believed that this city could be entered only by an invisible body which they called Huayuhuen. Only John magicians can develop this body. When he reached the Antarctic, he searched for the oasis of warm water that he was told existed in the midst of all the ice. This was the Tierra Verde, or Greenland of the south. He was also in search of the white sun, the cold flame that once existed at the North Pole but was now at the south. Then one day he came back. Riding his horse with the white star on its forehead, he proceeded slowly along the road. He imagined that his love was with him. She was telling him not to be discouraged, saying that the city would appear around the next corner, that he would soon have news of it. Perhaps the hermit would help. He was startled. Why hadn't he thought of the hermit? He quickly returned to the forest and went to the cave where the old man had been. There were 3 or 4 drawings and paintings on the wall of the cave. He lit a candle and moved his hands over the surface, looking for a face. He had a strong feeling there had been one there before. Then, as he was about to leave the cave, he tripped over a pile of bones. It was the skeleton of the Mylodon. Outside, an Araucanian shaman was waiting for him. His tongue was split, and so it was difficult for him to talk. The man asked about the hermit. "What hermit?" answered the shaman. "I've seen you here before, but you were alone, and now you're here with that woman on the horse. Who is she?" "At first I thought you might be Witranalwe. You know, he has a horse that gets bigger and bigger every time he rides." But the man insisted. "Surely you remember. There was a hermit. He was a white man and blind." "There's never been a hermit living here," he answered. "Perhaps you were talking to yourself, or were talking to the ghost of the Mylodon. Or maybe a dwarfish Ankimalan has entered your body. Or possibly you're the Imbunchi, since I noticed that you walk backward with your feet pointed in reverse." He left the Indian and once again found himself in the middle of the forest. Enough light came through the tangled foliage to nourish the ferns and open the petals of the bell-shaped copper flowers. Around him, Manya, Raouli and wild eucalyptus trees filled the air with smells strong enough to make him feel drunk. He got off his horse and sat down on the ground. In the distance, a woodpecker was drilling into a tree. Before him, a fallen tree lay across the river. He looked at it, and after a while he saw a girl coming toward him. She was no more than 8 years old and wore a blue polka-dot apron. Her blonde hair stirred in the breeze. She walked across the old tree trunk and came up to him. She looked at him in a way which he recognized. "I've come to meet you from the other side," she said. "You must go in the opposite direction. Keep looking." By mid-afternoon, the man reached a lake which was enclosed by steep rocks. A waterfall ran down into it, making a soft, rippling noise. He took off his clothes and entered the water. The dead woman who was always with him swam at his side. They approached the waterfall, which was half in the shade. The water moved in soft green circles, and he felt himself being moved around until he reached the mouth of a cave worn into the rock. The current directed him inside, where he found stalactites hanging down from above. He grabbed one of them, and then on a wall nearby he saw a red kapaihué. He thought of it as a sign and didn't dare touch it. He looked back over his shoulder for the dead woman, but she wasn't there. She had probably gone into the dark part of the cave, he thought, or been carried by the current to the other side. He swam out and went toward the waterfall in search of her. He began to fear that she had drowned in a whirlpool. He climbed onto the shore and dressed. He was still troubled by doubt, wondering what would have happened if he had allowed himself to be carried into the inner cave by the movement of the water, asking himself whether at the end of all that darkness he might not have found a new light, even, perhaps, the city. Then one day he came to his old family house. It had once been the centre of enormous landholdings and was centuries old. There were many underground galleries held up by half-rotten pillars and containing chains and the bones of prisoners. Some people believed these tunnels reached to the central square of the city. They may also have extended to the mountains. He crossed the old porch and entered the house, which was made up of a series of patios linked together by corridors. Some of the old servants were sitting in broken-down chairs, sunning themselves. They were allowed to stay on because they belonged to the tradition of the house, like the furniture and the paintings in the room. The man announced that he wanted to stay, and so he was given a room on the upper level overlooking one of the old patios. There was a table with candelabra and an old leather-bound book with mouldy clasps. There was also a big wardrobe, a high-backed chair and a narrow bed with a canopy. On the wall hung a portrait of one of his ancestors. The man threw himself on the bed and remained there without moving for several days. He stared at the moth-eaten velvet of the canopy. Sometimes he dozed off. No one came to see him or brought him food. Sometimes he would dream of himself lying on a rock, trying to save a girl who was throwing herself over the edge. He would try to keep calm and look into the girl's face in order to discover who she was and how she felt. After a while, he realized that she wasn't suffering, but that her face was marked by a smile of complicity. The smile widened and then changed into a grimace of helpless fury. Then the face broke into pieces, receded into the distance and vanished. He got up from the bed, sword in hand, and sat down in the high-backed chair in front of the portrait of his ancestor. He tried to remove all thoughts from his mind. Waves seemed to rise from the floor and fill the room. Before his eyes, a cylindrical tube took form and began to rotate. There was an orange light at one end of the tube, and a tiny figure seemed to be coming up from inside it. He stopped. The light went out and the cylinder disappeared. Then suddenly his ancestor stood before him, dressed in the robes of a priest. He felt a strange physical sensation through the closeness of his relative. He recognized himself in the figure's hands and veins and was overcome by a feeling of kinship. At the same time, he noticed other traits that came from a foreign country. The ancestor looked at him carefully and then began to speak. "Yes, this is the road of tears, which is the more difficult one. I know it well. God bless you and help you." The man then replied, How is it that I can see someone else in you, or even two or three others? Is this proof of reincarnation? I have the feeling that what is happening now has taken place before in another land and another time. Characters seem to repeat themselves eternally and with increasing intensity. Perhaps we should wait till later to talk of what you call reincarnation. You know it's not a proper subject for me. But let me tell you how I came to know about reincarnation, the man persisted. When I was about 4 years old, I began to have a sense of my own identity, or ego. I looked at other people and I said to myself, I wonder whether they feel their identities or egos in the same way I do. I've been puzzled by this problem ever since, knowing that I must die. I've come to the conclusion that when I die, some other person will take my identity or ego. This person will represent me. No other explanation seems possible. If my identity were to perish entirely, no one would ever feel as I do today. I cannot accept this idea. On the contrary, I believe that feelings and thoughts have often been repeated and will continue to be so. That is what I mean by reincarnation. The identity of the past will continue into the future. The same I who existed in the past will come again. I realize I've not explained this very well, but it is nearly impossible to express this concept. But why can't individual identity be ended forever? Asked the ancestor. To appear once and never again? No one is going to think and feel exactly as you do. That ego is over and done with. Each generation brings different beings, but it doesn't matter, since the only important thing is blood relationship. Insofar as you are able to plunge into the river of blood and perceive its rhythm and melody, you may enjoy a happiness beyond transitory life. You will survive by living within a family archetype beyond time and space. Awareness of this blood relationship depends largely on the sensitivity of succeeding generations. This is what reincarnation means. I become reincarnated or survive in you because we are both able to hear this secret melody. Not everyone can do this, and that is why reincarnation is rare. Do you mean that the dream of eternal love is just a family melody that we are destined to go on interpreting? Our family, which is centuries old, came here in search of a secret element. We received our inheritance from a part of humanity that doesn't belong to the earth. You are the last to come to this house, but who knows whether your branch will flourish or not. Still, through you we all live again, loving and suffering. You are powerful enough to open the tomb and bring us out into the daylight. But you're not the only one to have done so. My father, my grandfather and I have all been caught by the same obsession. We all renounce physical love for an eternal love realized beyond death. The argument of our blood has always stressed the possibility of this individual initiation. Our family's mission is to revive this possibility, which in recent years has lost its attraction before the end comes and reduces this old house to dust. The ancestor disappeared, and all that remained was the portrait on the wall, which only partly resembled the man. He suddenly felt hungry. The door opened and a shadow came into the room. It was one of the old servants bringing a tray of food. I've been ordered to serve you. In the old days we had 7-course meals, but now everything is different. Nobody pays me real gold escudos anymore. But I stay on because I've always been here and there's nowhere else to go. That's not true, answered the man. You know very well that we've met in other places. And I don't want your food. I'm not physically hungry, but I want you to take me, as you've done before, my faithful friend, right up to the doors of the city. Come then, replied the old man. They passed through some long corridors until they reached a patio with flowers on its walls. The afternoon sun shone on the iron grills and on the sagging wooden lintels. The old man stopped and clapped his hands. Just then a number of women wearing black dresses and dull-coloured mantles came out of the rooms. They began to laugh and clap their hands. He's come back again, they cried out. He's come back to play with us as he used to do. They're Yewolfers, explained the old man. Don't you remember them? I'm also one. What's a Yewolfie? A helper, someone who plays games. Surely you remember. They shouted and jumped up and down in the late afternoon light. Let's play, one of them cried out. Let's bind his eyes. They grabbed him and wrapped a cloth around his head. Then they turned him around in circles, laughing all the time. He begged them to take the bandage off. but they insisted he tell them what he was looking for. "Where is she? Where have you hidden her?" Then they took the bandage off and made him enter one of the rooms where another group of women sat next to a fire. They had wooden masks on their faces and were weaving small rugs. "We're weaving a wedding dress for your bride," said one of them. "But what we're really weaving is your soul. The soul doesn't exist by itself, but must be woven in the form of a small rug. How would you like yours made? Choose the colours." Another woman showed him a huge pair of scissors. "These are to cut the cord of life. I have cut hers." She laughed behind her mask. Just then he impulsively snatched away her mask. The face revealed was that of the girl falling into the void. It broke into pieces and left behind a faceless body, a black hulk. The ancestor then returned. "You were wrong to visit the rest of the house without my permission. Don't you know what this house is? It's your own body, and now you're living here." He reached out his gnarled finger and touched the younger man's stomach. "You should go down to the cellar before you visit the towers, although in a sense there is neither an upstairs nor a downstairs. You can come and go from either, but whatever we do, we must first visit the original ancestor and receive his blessing." "No," answered the man. "I'm only interested in her. Tell me where I can find her. Somehow I've lost her ghost." "She's now undergoing a second death, called the interim mori. As she dies a second time, her astral body begins to disintegrate. You wouldn't recognize her if you saw her now. That's why she carries a mask. She doesn't want to frighten you." "This is like the Tibetan Book of the Dead," said the man. "You go from one state of decomposition to another." "Don't talk to me about books," answered the ancestor. "I've also written some." He indicated one lying on the table. It was called Natural Right. The ancestor picked it up and began to flick through its pages and to read. "True love never survives the act of fulfillment. Rather, it is a secret agreement that takes place on another plane. True union occurs only in dreams." He paused to explain that his book dealt with an inspired science. "Love," he continued reading, "has nothing to do with sexuality. It comes before it. Love even existed before species were divided into two sexes. There are primary organisms and hermaphroditic ones which reproduce themselves by parthenogenesis. But they look for another hermaphrodite to love, making a parody of partition before it actually happens. Love produces the partition of the hermaphrodite and the differentiation of the sexes. Love creates sex, not the other way around. The hermaphrodite was divided so that he would have a motivation for existence, searching through the world for a reunion, or for transformation into a new androgynous being. This is a being quite different from a primeval hermaphrodite. The new being is neither a natural son nor a supernatural angel, but has some of the qualities of each." The ancestor stopped reading and spoke directly to the man. "When you find your lover and join her forever, when you really marry her, you'll know what I mean. Books can't explain it." He leafed through the last pages without reading any. Leaving the book open, he put it down on the table and walked out of the room. Stiffly, as though he were leaving his own body, the man got up from the chair and went over to the table. He lit a candle and looked down at the open pages. Written there in an archaic handwriting was the title Sutra's Aphorisms. He began to read. "O goddess, you are the real me. There's no difference between you and me. The wind which blows from the garden where my lover sits brings her essence to me. You should think of the soul as a castle made of diamonds or of very clear crystal, with many rooms and dwelling places, some above and some below and others on the sides. In the centre is the most important one, where the most secret dialogue takes place between the lover and the soul. This castle is planted in the living waters of life. Now we must learn how to enter it. Perhaps you think I'm talking nonsense, since I've already said that the castle is the soul. But there are great distances between states of being. There are many souls on the outskirts of the castle, some wanting to come in and others wishing to remain outside. Many don't even know such a beautiful place exists. You don't have to go back and forth if you're looking for me. Just look inside yourself. I live there now. I gave myself to him, and then I changed. Now I am my beloved, and my beloved is me. They are like omens and messengers of the approaching dark night of the soul, even though they are transient like this waiting night. But doubt is what the soul calls the dark night. This dark night of loving fire, as it becomes a purge, so the soul is set on fire. Bitter wind, stay away. Don't touch the wall where my wife is sleeping. There were other sections of the book, many with titles and subtitles. Under the last rule of things, death. The warrior must give his lover's face to death. In this way, death becomes feminized. The kiss. The kiss was a new ritual established to replace the knife cut and the sucking of blood. It also involves the mixing of breaths. But just as the white god Quetzalcoatl failed when he tried to replace the bloody sacrifices of the Aztecs by floral offerings, so the kiss never achieved what was intended of it. It became a mere sensual act. The true kiss is the first step on a road leading to the lost home and the city of eternal life. The look. Ecstasy expresses the union of virility and femininity within man. The look transmits this ecstasy to the heart. He turned additional pages of the book until he came to this. Family wine. In the fifth book of Windenfeld, which we alone know, the creation of the spirit of wine is explained. It has never been described in another book. It is Spiritus Mercuri Universalis, or the menstruation of the grape, the ultimate dissolving of liquid. Our family believes that liquid gold cannot be created unless the spirit of wine is first obtained. The formula for this is to take equal portions of red and white wine and beat them at a steady temperature. The wine should boil until a thin layer of oil appears. This is putrefaction, or vegetal menstruation. During the time it takes for this oil to rise to the surface, those in attendance must pray. Then, when the bowl is uncovered, the participants inhale the aroma. If it is subtly penetrating, it means that the spirit of wine has appeared. The spirit must be drunk fast before it condenses. Once this is done, the vas hermeticum is closed and kept boiling until the remaining oil is transformed into metal, into the liquid gold that represents the quintessential fifth element. This material is not found in nature and has to be artificially manufactured. Two roads may be followed, one leading quickly to its destination because it does not require the distillation of the spirit of wine, nor the help of a woman, a soror mystica, in the laboratory. It has been called the dry road. Whether its results are the same as those of the other, who can say? But our family has always chosen the road that makes use of wine. It is called the liquid road and requires a woman's company. She produces the spirit of wine and gives it to us. Nevertheless, this is no companionable journey, for the rest of the voyage is terribly lonely. You will be more alone than the man on the dry road and will face many dangers. That is why we think this road the most noble and complete. We're not allowed to write down the name of the first of us who chose it, but in our family we always raise a glass to him. Then followed several illegible rhymes and others that had been crossed out with ink. It was impossible to decipher them. The man then turned to the last page but one, and this is what he read. I tell you, my heart was opened up as though by a knife, and you entered it. Even it closed and was sealed. You will therefore have no other companion until the day of resurrection and last judgment. You will share my life and my death as well. When I die, you will remain in my bert in the gloomy depths of the grave. Once again the ancestor appeared. He was carrying a candelabrum and was dressed in an elaborate robe. Come with me, he said. I want to show you our vineyards and wine cellars where we've made wine for 700 years. This has always been our family business. They left the empty house and went out to the fields where the workers were gathering bunches of grapes in hampers and pressing them with their bare feet. They sang old songs as the new wine was made. In a tent, the members of the family had gathered to take part in the harvest festival. Old and young sat in total silence and concentration. When the ancestor arrived, they stood up and bowed one by one. They looked at the man with surprise, not recognizing him. Don't worry, said the ancestor. Most of them don't know what this is all about. He turned away and said, Now let's go to the wine cellars. Once again they were alone. The ancestor went on ahead, showing him the barrels, each with a name inscribed on it. Toward the back, the barrels became smaller. The best wine is kept for the family, he said. Here we also keep the spirit of wine. You've probably read how it's made in the book I left in your room. The fifth book of Windenfeld is our family property, and no one besides us knows that he wrote it. They were near the end of the upper level, and the ancestor paused at an unmarked barrel. This one doesn't have a name yet, but I'll put yours on it when I know what your real name is." By now they had reached the entrance to the underground vault, but before going down, the ancestor changed his clothes and picked up a sword. "You must take a sword too," he said. "You'll need it." The ancient wooden pillars were held together with leather straps. The floor was uneven, the air moist and heavy. From time to time in the glow of the candle they could see a few rusty links of broken chain. "We're now going to visit the great ancestor," he said. For a long time they walked on in darkness, and the man asked his ancestor how he found his way. "I don't know where we are," he answered. "I simply keep walking. No one has ever been through all of these passages." Just then they heard a moan followed by something like a roar. The man felt a sudden chill, but his ancestor calmed him by taking his arm. "I felt the same thing when I first came down here," he said. "Just hold on tight to your sword." Shortly afterward they stopped. It appeared that they had reached the end. In front of them was a stone column. At its base they saw in the candlelight a deformed human being tied with chains and straps. His face was marked by humiliation and suffering, but these scourges also revealed the sanctity of mankind. The face represented the features of creatures everywhere, whether animal, fish, vegetable, or mineral. "Here is the great ancestor, the great-grandfather of all grandfathers. Ask him for his blessing and forgiveness. Kneel down before him and kiss his sores." "Never," the man replied, "but I will free him. That's why I came here." With a simple blow of his sword, he cut the chains and straps that had bound the great ancestor, the king who had ruled over all the slaves of Atlantis. He came into the room. He still bore the marks of the tortures and chains, and had a peculiar smell. "I've come to thank you," he said, "and I'll express my gratitude to you in the same way, by cutting your chains and freeing you from the links that have held you to a dream. Here's the genealogical tree of the family. One of your great-grandfathers was named Sunday, another Saturday. Your name is Friday, since Friday is the day of your stat. A new branch is slowly growing at the top of the tree. It will be the last because it is sterile." The man began to thank the great ancestor, but was quickly interrupted. "Don't thank me," he said. "This family is cursed by a limitless pride which seeks shelter in illusion. Your ancestor in the portrait and your other great-grandfathers were all incapable of loving people of flesh and blood. They all devoted themselves to something that did not exist, hoping thereby to save their pride. You're the same. You're unable to love a real woman and so love a dead one instead. You know she doesn't exist because she's gone forever. Like the rest of your ancestors, you love no one except yourself." He felt a lance enter his side. Unable to move or answer, he closed his eyes. Then with great difficulty he moved his stone lips. "Why hast thou forsaken me? I loved her with all my being and strength. It's true I loved her in a different way, but it was more than ordinary love. I've taken her through the world, giving her my eyes so she might see, my senses so she might feel. If I can't love anyone else, it's because she has made me burn and left me cold, because she and I are one." He then began to pray to the morning star. In a few minutes he heard a voice. "No, not yet. I am still in the grave." After a while the ancestor spoke. "This is Negredo, the dark night of the soul. The corruption of one is the purification of another. Corruptio unius generatio est alterium." After Negredo comes Albedo. "This is Albania, the White Land, the ascent to miraculous heights, and a final meeting in the oasis surrounded by ice. Perhaps she will also appear to help guide him along the difficult path, until at last they reach the gate of the city, which she does not enter." The man went over to the mirror and looked at himself. He discovered that his eyes were hers. He was looking at himself from within her. "You and I are one," he exclaimed. This cry of triumph brought about the earthquake. As the mountains trembled along the southern coast, the land of the androgynous Alela emerged from beneath the ocean. The end.